Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, today is the second Wednesday of the month, which means it's time for Rewind Your Body Clock with Jayney Goddard. She's broadcasting live all the way from England. So we have a lot of international guests on the show, and today she's going to be talking about how to become resilient. Please welcome her to the show. This is a great topic, especially since COVID. A lot of people, realize that resiliency is a very important thing to have in life.
AJ, thank you so much for having me. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Yes, resilience is crucial. My goodness, after what we've been through in the last few years, and also what we're dealing with on the world stage at the moment, there's just so much trouble and conflict and strife, and people, because of the the impact of lockdown and the toll that it's taken on so many people, that we don't even sometimes acknowledge. This is the thing. I think that it was a very traumatic time for so many people. And then, of course, we're now seeing essentially the financial aftermath of all of that. Plus, also, we've got all of these things that are coming through to us from our news services and on social media and so on about it. Obviously, Ukraine, we've got a horrific situation with the Turkey-Syria earthquake and other earthquakes in other locations just recently as well. And it's just a really, really difficult time for so many people. So I really thought it was about time to talk about resilience. It's a topic that is very close to my heart at the moment, especially because my darling mother is very, very unwell at the moment, and she's been in hospital. She hasn't long come home, and we've got intensive nursing, lots and lots of carers and support workers coming in, doctors coming in, nurses coming in, and so on. We are very, very, very blessed to have all of this massive support in the UK as we do. And so, that is something I'm truly overwhelmingly grateful for. But it's given me a chance to sort of sit in the hospital when mum was in and just observe what was going on around. And we know in the UK that nurses who work in the National Health Service, our NHS as it's known, are dissatisfied. We've got strikes going on, and friends of mine who are nurses, midwives and so on, are actually saying we never ever thought that we would ever be put in a position where we would have to go out on strike. And it's just dreadful. It really is. It's about wages, it's about working conditions and so on and so forth. And these are people who are doing this work as a vocation. So it got me thinking about it and, wondering about how they are, what's going on for them, looking at their levels of burnout in the profession. And it's incredibly high. So I was wondering, is that just to do with the UK? Or is this burnout amongst nursing and medical staff more ubiquitous around the world? And actually, AJ, my goodness, it is. In fact, it's worse in other countries. I had no idea. I was just thinking, it must be our situation here, because you tend to hear more about your own kind of backyard. And anyway, so I started looking at some of the research about nurses in USA and Canada. In Canada, 95% of nurses say they've got absolute burnout and they're actively coming out of the profession. In the USA, it's 75% of nurses actively burnt out and actively looking to change profession. Now, these are people that we completely rely on. If those nurses leave the profession, what on earth are we going to do? It's not a good picture. So I've also been looking, though, at what's the flip side of that. What can be done to improve resilience, let's say in nurses first of all, and then extrapolate from there and look at what the research says about building resilience in ourselves, in our first responders, in our teachers, in our police forces, and so on and so forth. And it's a very interesting picture because a lot of research actually exists on this topic. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, AJ, if that's okay. And also then I thought, let's get really practical today with several exercises that are driven by the research evidence in the field of positive psychology and resilience. So these are approaches and exercises that actually do make you more resilient. The term sort of in the resilience research community is our bounce back ability, which is a kind of one of those made up words, but sort of everybody's adopted it. It's our ability to bounce back from tough times like a rubber ball. And the more resilient we are, the more able we are to bounce back when something comes out at us out of left field. So that's really what I thought we might do today, AJ, and share these exercises in the hopes that our viewers will be able to then share these with their loved ones. And you can rest assured and be really secure in the knowledge that they do work, that they are research evidence based, and that they're easy. I mean, that's the other thing is, there's no point in me giving exercises if they're all terribly difficult and take ages and are boring. No, on the contrary, these are approaches that are enjoyable and insightful and will make you rather happy and increase your happiness levels in actually doing them. So how does that sound, AJ? Do you like
that? Sounds like a very useful thing to do.
Great. Okay, so let's forge ahead then. So what they found with the nurses, and this is predominantly research coming out of the USA. There's great mindfulness research all over the world now, but it really did have its kind of birth in the USA, both West Coast and East Coast. And, we've got people like John Kabat-Zinn to thank for this. And then we've got the amazing folks over at Berkeley, at the Science Center for the Greater Good, or the Greater Good Science Center. Sometimes they flip the name around a little. Amazing researchers, extraordinary people who are really hardcore scientists, who are working in these amazing fields of loving kindness and compassion and mindfulness and mind-body medicine. And of course, also we have to go back and give the nod to essentially the man who really was the father of mind-body medicine, the wonderful Dr. Herbert Benson. Now, I was lucky enough to train under him on his mind-body medicine training courses. So a lot of what I'm sharing today comes straight from the granddaddy of this field, which is good. And it's useful, I think, for people to know that it hasn't sort of gone through change after change after change as it's gone from one person and handed down. So what was found with the nurses in the USA was that they looked at these nurses who were saying that they were very, very burnt out. And they did a brief mindfulness-based intervention with them. Now, in real language, in real English, what that actually is that they taught them mindfulness. And they just did a couple of weeks training, which you would think, wouldn't you? It's not very much. Is that really going to contribute to anything meaningful or anything measurable? Would there even be any measurable positive change in these people? And the answer is actually, yes, there was. They were happier, they felt healthier, and they were measuring on their measures of health and well-being, such as, how their sleep was, the types of foods they were wanting to consume, their alcohol consumption or not, had that changed at all? Smoking, had that moderated? Had they decided or given up or decided they were going to smoke fewer cigarettes? So all of those sorts of measures, as well as blood pressure, blood sugar, and all of those sorts of more physiological measures had improved after just 2 weeks of a mindfulness training. So what is mindfulness? It's very, very straightforward, very simple. Mindfulness is, I guess, we could best say, it's when we take time to just be in the present, to sort of bring ourselves into the here and now, settle down and just take a moment to notice what's going on around us, noticing sounds that are in our environment, noticing perhaps the temperature of the air on our skin, maybe noticing how, if you're sitting in a chair, for example, maybe noticing how the chair supports us, perhaps under our bottom and our legs and our feet on the ground, and perhaps our back against the back of the chair. How do our clothes feel on our skin? It's all of those little minutiae, all of those little bits and pieces that constitute really becoming aware of the present moment. It's also about how do we feel in the present moment. Are we feeling stressed? Are we feeling happy? Are we feeling tired? Are we feeling hungry, grouchy? What is it that's going on for us right in the moment? Now, you'll be aware from what I've just said that there are no right or wrong answers. It's just about what's actually going on right now. Now, the thing is that what this does is it brings us into this present moment. And when we're fully in the present moment, what actually happens is that we're not being kind of stressed out by what's coming down the pike at us, from the future, or what's kind of, just gone on in the recent past or the distant past that we're still perseverating on all this time later. It brings us into the here and now. And that gives us the most extraordinary break, the most extraordinary time out. And when we do that, it allows a sort of a reset, if you will. And when we do this kind of reset process, it dramatically impacts our stress levels, and it helps us to really start to begin the process of becoming more resilient. And so what's been discovered is that when we take time to be mindful, it actually changes the way that our brain works, insofar as the brain has this wonderful ability to restructure itself. It's a beautiful and most amazing and fascinating thing called neuroplasticity. And what actually happens with neuroplasticity is that our brains are able to rewire themselves so that our neurons, our connections, the way that our brain, all the bits and pieces all connect together, all of those nerves and all of those junctions form and connect. The brain's very clever, and it actually has ways of connecting to facilitate the way that we think more easily. So if we're mostly thinking negative thoughts, or if we're mostly associating with very negative people, the brain will go, aha, well, this is the kind of thinking that you're wanting to do because you keep doing this. So I'm going to connect in ways that enable you to think those thoughts more easily, which is why we've got to be very, very aware of the kind of news that we look at, the kind of social media we take in, the kind of people we hang out with. If we're hanging out with people who constantly complain all the time with no resolution, and they're complaining for complaining's sake, we've got to really guard against that, because that's actually quite dangerous for us. And in a moment, I'm going to come on to that, because there's an implication here for healthcare workers, integrative medical practitioners, complementary medical practitioners like myself and others, for example, because we're stuck in practice day in, day out, listening to complaints, because people come to us for a reason, they're not well or what have you. So we will have people giving us, very, very difficult stories, very challenging stories. So how, does that affect our neuroplasticity? Well, the answer is yes, it can, if we allow it to. But if we take these little mindfulness breaks, then this will actually help to inoculate us against the negativity that we have to deal with as part and parcel of our day-to-day working lives as healthcare supporters, nurses, doctors, integrative medical practitioners, and all the rest. It's the same for first responders. So this idea of mindfulness breaks is almost like a psychological first aid. So yeah, it's really important that we do it. So how do we do it? It's very interesting. A lot of people, going right back to Dr. Herbert Benson, would always say you need 20 minutes twice a day of either a mantra meditation or sitting and being mindful and so on. But what other researchers have found over the years is that, yes, it's lovely to do that, and that is absolutely valid. Sitting for 20 minutes twice a day, if you have the luxury of time to do so, absolutely is valid. But the intriguing thing is, it's been discovered that the minimum effective dose for meditation to get all of these wonderful health-giving, incredible advantages is just 12 minutes a day. And we don't have to do that all at once. So if we're able to train ourselves to have these little mini mindful breaks, it will work. So you're standing at the checkout queue and or checkout line if you're in America, and so you've got a moment there while the person in front of you is being served. So yeah, stand there, just be aware of what's going on for you in the present. You don't have to look as though you're doing, nobody would know you were doing a mindful break, but only you would know, but you're just really, really being in the present and being aware. Perhaps when you're at the traffic lights, just take a moment for a mindful, just a few seconds for a mindful break. And, so you'll see where I'm going with this. Anytime you get a little bit of downtime in your busy day to day, just bring yourself into the present moment. It's quite extraordinary because these mindful breaks don't just calm us down. They lower our blood pressure. They have extraordinary physiological effects that are incredibly health-giving and health-promoting. And they even serve to help grow our telomeres, those caps on the ends of our chromosomes, that little repeating unit of DNA that actually can be measured and can show our biological age. So you see, there's method in my madness. It's not just about calming us down and making us feel good on a temporary basis. It goes so much deeper than that, even to the effect that it has of rewinding our biological clocks and helping us to become biologically younger. And why do we want to do that? Well, the reason we want to become biologically younger is because this is what helps us to become more resistant to the so-called diseases that we wrongly associate with being a natural part of the aging process. So, excuse me, AJ, what I'm thinking of here are things like lifestyle-related cancers. Obviously, not all cancers, sometimes there are cancers that cannot possibly be avoided, but many, many cancers, as we know, are lifestyle-related. Things like type 2 diabetes, arthritis, autoimmune illnesses, even the neurological diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other dementias. So we associate these, and a lot of us think of these illnesses as being a natural part of the aging process. The truth of the matter is, and for those viewers who watched the last session that we did with Dr. Frank Sabatino, you'll remember that he spoke about these diseases as being largely avoidable, haltable, and reversible, even if we do have them. And in conventional medicine, that is not really totally acknowledged. It's not really totally, the doctors are not completely aware that there is so much that we can do just with lifestyle choices. So coming back to the idea of resilience, mindful breaks will dramatically increase our resilience levels. But what else can we do to improve resilience? Well, so I think it's important to understand that resilience is not just a mental thing. It's not just mental, emotional. It's actually physical as well. So what do we do to maintain our physical resilience so that we're less susceptible to opportunistic infections, colds, flus, viruses, and so on? Well, what we can do is we first of all got to make sure that our nutrition is on point. Now, as you know, and we all keep coming back to this because this is what the evidence says, a whole food, plant-based diet that is free from added salt, oil, and sugar, SOS free, is absolutely the way to go. I throw into the mix alcohol-free, caffeine-free as well, because, you know, we know that they don't really do us any good, but most essentially salt, oil, and sugar-free. So making sure that we are eating as well as we possibly can, consuming as much of an array of fresh fruit and vegetables, in moderation, nuts and seeds, if that is something that agrees with you and works with your particular protocol. I know that you talk about this all the time, AJ, so I'm sure that everybody watching will be so aware of what you do and what you talk about so brilliantly and what you share so brilliantly. So I won't dwell on that because I think everybody's really on message with that. But the reason that we're doing this is not because, you know, it's coming from just a sort of a compassionate perspective or what have you, but it's because this is what the science says as well. No ifs, buts, and maybes. So by making sure that we are consuming foods and liquids, water, for example, that actually are health promoting, this is going to go a massively long way in improving our resilience, maintaining our bodies in the way that we want them to be maintained, not just from a body composition perspective, but also from a hormonal perspective, from a biological perspective, and from, you know, the whole beautiful cascade and constellation of our physiology, because we need those phytonutrients in order for our bodies to function correctly. So, you know, that's one thing that we have to do. The next thing we do need to do, and it's just absolutely crucial, of course, is sleep. If you can, it's ideal to sleep in a fully darkened room. I know I talk about this a lot, but it is so important. It's just crucial to us, because the problem is that if you are exposed to light at night, it shuts off the production of the sleep hormone melatonin. And if we shut that off, we'll be wakeful, we won't get the restorative deep sleep, and we won't get the REM, the dream state sleep, that we need in order to be happy, healthy, and sane. In fact, if you deprive people of sleep for a long enough period, and it's not that long a time, they actually mentally completely break down. Sleep is unbelievably crucial, and I do talk about it a lot in my book Rewind Your Body Clock, because it is one of the cornerstones, the most important things that we can do for our health and well-being. Then of course we come to hydration. Hydration is crucial. Even a small amount of dehydration actually affects us and makes us less resilient and more vulnerable to stressors and opportunistic infections as well, and will worsen any ongoing conditions. So these things are to be taken seriously, and you can judge how hydrated you are or not simply by looking at the color of your urine. Your urine should be a pale straw color, no darker than that. It's got to be pale. Excuse me. If it's any darker than that, then get some fluid on board. Ideally water. Water is what we're really designed to drink. But you know, if you're into your green juices and all of those sorts of lovely things, as I am, then those are also really rather lovely as well. And then finally, AJ, I just wanted to really go through a few exercises that we know are really helpful. If you don't mind, I'm just going to I've actually got a smoothie, talking about things to drink. I've got a lovely smoothie here. So excuse me 1 second.
You got to tell us what's in the smoothie.
Oh, I shall. Do you know, it looks really ghastly, but what's in it? Dark berries, raspberries. So I've got black currants, blackberries, raspberries and strawberries, kale. Because I'm rushing around and being a full-time carer now, as well as doing everything else, I've also got a couple of scoops of a really clean protein powder. I often don't really recommend protein powders because I believe that on, you know, the way that we eat, you do get enough protein. We all know that, but because my meal times are very erratic, sometimes I'm missing meals. because of everything that's going on with my darling mum. And for example, last night I was up 4 or 5 times in the night to look after her. So I'm indulging in a little bit of really clean protein powder there as well. So yeah, and it's delicious, if I do say so myself. So, yeah, oh, and vanilla. I've got a little bit of vanilla essence and a really beautiful, nice organic one. So yeah, so that's just pepped it up a little bit, and some cinnamon as well, because as we know, cinnamon just kind of takes the edge off the sugar spike, and that's the last thing anybody needs right now, is a sugar spike, especially when you're under a lot of stress. That's not a good thing. So yeah, so that's helpful. And I've been talking all day. And of course, mum's deaf. So the problem is I'm constantly shouting. This is the thing. Really, I have to really raise my voice constantly. So the old vocal cords are starting to give out a bit. Anyway, let's talk about some of these lovely exercises I've found for our viewers. What we've got, one of the first things is that I wanted to talk about the importance in life of having a sense of purpose. Now, when we find meaning in our environment, it's a huge act of resilience. In fact, Viktor Frankl, he was a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. He wrote this extraordinary book that I recommend to everybody. It's not easy reading, of course, obviously, but it's called Man's Search for Meaning, and it is one of the most profound books ever. And it's an exercise in resilience, and really tells you everything you need to know about resilience. Frankl said in 1959, he said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of his human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way." That in itself is such a profound statement. And it sort of reflects where we are with the research, and it shows this is sort of what we're seeing now. Is that, psychologists have found repeatedly that people with a very strong sense of purpose experience more resilience, a stronger sense of well-being, and even better cognitive functioning. Purpose in life helps us to foster resilience, in part because it protects our brain against the negative effects of stress. And a wonderful researcher, she's a neuropsychologist, I should say, give her a correct title. Her name's Patricia Doyle, PhD, and she actually works at the Alzheimer's Disease Center. And she said something very profound, I feel. Purpose somehow gives your brain resilience. It makes your brain stronger and more resistant to the effects of diseases like Alzheimer's. So doesn't it just go to show that just changing our viewpoint actually impacts an incredibly serious disease like Alzheimer's? And what's really intriguing is that you may not see actual organic change in the brain of the Alzheimer's patient, but when they are given resilience building skills, their ability to cope with the ravages of the disease is markedly improved. So it's so easy to do these things. So the next step is where we look at our life purpose. The Japanese have a word for it. It's called ikigai. And that word loosely translates to purpose in life, or the French would say raison d'être, of course. So let's take a little sort of inventory of a few questions about our purpose in life. So the first question that we need to ask ourselves is just to sit quietly in a quiet moment, say, why am I? It's a really weird question. It's not grammatically correct in any way, but why am I? Why am I? And when we start repeating that to ourselves, we start to get answers, and it's very intriguing and it's very profound. And the next question is, why do I get up in the morning? What gets me up in the morning? What gives me my get up and go? What are those reasons? What are those purposes? The next question is, What keeps me awake at night? Some people are lucky enough not to have anything keeping them awake at night. But anyway, what is it that keeps me awake at night? The next one is, when am I most alive? So take a moment to think about what really fires you up, what really makes your heart sing. When am I most alive? And then the next question that you ask yourself is, what does being successful mean to me? And again, when we ask ourselves this question, what does being successful mean to me? Sometimes the answers that we expect to get are not the answers we get. It's very intriguing. And then the next question that we need to think about is, how can I apply my gifts to a pursuit that is of deep interest to me and also helps others? We can shorten that a bit by saying, what can I do? How can I apply my gifts to doing something that is really interesting to me and also has the benefit of helping others? The next one's a real quick one. What can I do today to make a difference in one person's life? What can I do today to make a difference in one person's life? If you say yes to living purposefully, what do you say no to? This is an intriguing question. So if I decide, that's it, I'm going to live purpose, I'm going to live on purpose, what are the things I'm going to say no to? So that might be changing one's diet. It might be not binging one more episode of the latest Netflix drama. It might be saying no to that delicious looking cream cake over there, or whatever it is. What is it that you say no to? It could be relationships. It could be aspects of relationship. It could be demands placed on you, perhaps by an in-law, for example. It can be all sorts of interesting things that help us to set our boundaries. So that's something very important, a very important question. And now an imagination question. If you happened to meet an older version of yourself, what sage advice would they give you? So just project yourself into the future. Imagine yourself as an older version of yourself. What advice is that older self going to give you? Is a very interesting part of the exercise. Okay, so those are exercises that have been they've been created by some wonderful PhD researchers in the field of positive psychology. And they've been doing a lot of research with those questions, and they're finding that they're really helping people to develop a sense of purpose in life. And interestingly enough, what the researchers also found is that even if we don't have an exact purpose in life, the idea of searching for purpose and meaning in our lives actually has all the same positive health and wellness effects. So it's that sort of that search. It's the idea of being actively engaged in our lives that is so, so important. So that's that exercise. And I think the one I would like to talk to you about next is something that's very dear to my heart. I talk about and I teach a lot about kindness and loving kindness. And one of the great thinkers and researchers in the field is a wonderful lady called Sonia Lyubomirsky. And she's an amazing person. And she's actually shown in her research that one of the best ways to boost happiness and resilience is to perform acts of kindness, volunteering, mentoring, or even expressing gratitude towards others. So how do we integrate these things into our lives? Well, I know that our viewers will be absolutely au fait with how to do things like random acts of kindness. But I was wondering if anybody's watching in at the moment, whether they've got any particular favorite acts of kindness or random acts of kindness that they like to do. Sometimes we get some amazing answers with this question. But Sonia Lyubomirsky says, consider a formal volunteering program in an area or topic that you are passionate about. It's well known that volunteering is extraordinarily helpful for us, not just mentally and emotionally, but also physically, would you believe? Volunteers score better on every measure of health and well-being, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's just the most extraordinary sort of route to biological health and happiness. It's just extraordinary stuff. So the next exercise that we can actually think about in this section, acts of kindness, is pick one person a day to show extra kindness to. So don't overdo it. Don't overwhelm yourself with thinking, goodness me, I've got to go and volunteer here, and I've got to go and volunteer there, and I've got to be kind to this person, I've got to be kind to that one, and I've got to go and put money in that stranger's top up their parking meter. There's a very what a typical one that people do. But you know, the thing is, actually, it has been shown in the research again that the converse is true. If you try to do too much, then it has an opposite effect. You end up sort of getting kindness fatigue and you start burning out a bit. So they do say in the research, if you're going to volunteer, don't volunteer for more than 2 volunteering activities at a time, because otherwise you will tend to get burnout. So just be aware that there are limits on this, and nobody is Superman or Superwoman or Superperson, because actually you've got to look after it. Self-care is crucial. Absolutely crucial. We're going to come on to that in a moment. So have a think about the things that you can do. You know, a lot of the things you can do, for example, in cafes or coffee shops, that sort of places, you can pay it forward. So you can pay for a coffee for the next person in line. Or sometimes coffee shops will have a little program, or cafes will have a program, certainly over here, where they donate food and drinks to homeless people, and you can actually contribute to buy coffees or teas or drinks or juices or sandwiches or whatever it is, for the people the homeless people that they look after. So you know, there are quite a lot of ways that you can actually find all of this out, and things to do. For example, in the hospital just recently, I was chatting to a volunteer there. She's a lady that pushes the tea and coffee cart around the different wards, and getting teas and coffees for the patients and also for the visitors, which is really lovely. And obviously there's no charge for any of that. But she's nearly 90. And she's been volunteering at this particular hospital for the last 40 years. And she's so vibrant and so active. And I was saying, you know, I was being so interested in the, you know, the aspects, you know, the positive psychology aspects of volunteering and kindness. And I said, so, you know, Irma, you know, how are you? What does this do for you? She said, oh, I wouldn't be without it, dear. I wouldn't be without it. It's what keeps me it gets me up in the morning, keeps me going. I see all my friends, have a good laugh with the patients and the visitors, and just try to put a smile on everybody's face. And she was extraordinary, and still going strong at nearly 90, and giving to others in this beautiful way. So let's all learn from lovely Irma. And the next exercises that I wanted to chat about and share with you today are gratitude activities. The practice of gratitude is one of the most time-tested and proven methods for enhancing resilience. One study that was published in the Clinical Psychology Review, this was back in 2010, it confirmed that the benefits of habitually focusing on and appreciating the positive aspects of life on resilience. And this was by Robert Emmons. He's one of the superstars. He's sort of one of the rock stars in the field. They found that people who kept gratitude journals experienced improved well-being in every measure. So how do we do this? I'm going to combine this with another exercise because the two things are very, very similar. And my worry is that if I sort of break them down, it might get a bit confusing. So I wanted to just introduce the concept of keeping a gratitude diary. And then I wanted to bring into that the 3 Good Things workbook that you can actually get on my website. And it's a free download. So the 3 Good Things diary, it is a gratitude diary, really, of sorts. And the 3 Good Things exercise is where at the end of the day, what you'll do is you will sit and write in great detail, as much detail as you can, as much sensory detail as you can, about 3 good things that happened during the day. So it's not just a case of saying, oh, I caught my bus on time and that was a good thing. Well, yes, of course, it is a good thing. But you could say, for example, it was pouring with rain. I was really cold. I was really shivering at the bus stop and my bus came along just at the right time and I was able to jump on it and I got into the bus and it was really warm and toasty and I felt really cozy for the rest of my journey and I could look out of the window and I could see all these wonderful sights as I went on my way to work. You know, obviously it's got to be appropriate to you and your life. So perhaps, you know, you might have been able to take a walk in the forest on that particular day. Perhaps the sun was shining and you could feel the sun on your back and your shoulders just dropped down as you relaxed into that beautiful nature and connected with the air that you were breathing and the feel of the earth under your feet and the bird song and the sun dappling through the green leaves and so on. So it's all of these wonderful sensory cues that you need to bring in to your 3 Good Things diary or journal, whatever you want to call it. And so you write these 3 good things. There have to be 3 separate good things that you can be grateful for and happy that they occurred on this day. As I say, bring in all of those sensory cues. Now, the reason that we do that is because when we are writing all of this down, it's best to do it actually in longhand if you possibly can. It helps us to foster positive thoughts and emotions. And the interesting thing is, the more sensory cues you actually bring in, the more you are fostering a neuroplasticity, so the growth of the neurons, the rewiring of the brain, that actually facilitates greater levels of happiness, greater levels of resilience, and greater levels of peace and an improved response to stressors. And of course, as we know, as a consequence, all of that has the trickle-down effect of making us physically healthier as well, and actually making us biologically younger. So you see how all this stuff comes together. It's really intriguing that it all comes together. So consider ending your day by reflecting on those beautiful things that happened to you. And then at the end of the week, you can look back and go, my goodness, actually, this is a really good week. Gosh, I really enjoyed doing it. Because we forget, you know, we humans have a negativity bias. And that's an important thing. We tend to remember the bad things over remembering the good things. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is because developmentally, when we were back living in tribes, living in caves, for example, we needed to remember that time we went out walking to gather our nuts and our seeds and our berries, a saber-toothed tiger came round the corner and, my goodness, lucky I ran fast enough because he nearly got me. And so that's what's really hardwired into the most primitive parts of our brain. And this is why we have a negativity bias, because it keeps us safe. So what we're doing by the 3 good things and being grateful and really working on developing our gratitude muscle, is that we are helping to rewire the more laterally developed part of the brain, the cerebral cortex. And so that's actually then going to help us to be able to preferentially choose more positive thoughts and more psychological and mental well-being and health and happiness in the future. So that's how it all works. It's very interesting. The brain is a mighty intriguing organ. So there we go. I think AJ, we're almost at, we're coming towards the top of the hour. Are there any questions or anything that have come up? Because I can't see the group.
Okay, let me look there. I mean, I'm seeing some comments. People are talking about what some of their random acts of kindness are that they do, giving compliments to strangers, things like that. So that's really nice. And people are talking about how people seem less happy since the pandemic.
Yes. It's funny, actually, I don't know if it's the same for people who are watching, but certainly in the UK, what I've noticed is that there seems to be a lot more aggression. Not sort of necessarily overt aggression where people are sort of going around hitting each other. I'm sure that happens. It happens everywhere. But what I mean is just the sort of way that people behave in public, sort of more aggressive language being used and so on. And we also see this on social media. Social media has become a little bit of a free-for-all with trolling and nastiness and really very negative behaviors. So one of the things that we do have to do is make sure that if we are using social media, that we are intentionally using it. So for example, I know you do, AJ, I do, we have to use social media for our work, but we use it intentionally. So we're not just, doom scrolling, as they call it, to sort of see, oh my goodness, the next thing, oh my goodness, look at the next thing, oh my goodness, look at the next terrible thing that's happened, or this troll and this person being horrible to that person, and, flame wars happening and so on and so forth. So what we've got to do is we've got to pick social media that is going to be uplifting. One of the things I try to do, just for example, on my basic sort of Facebook feed, is I make an effort in the hopes that people will see it or just stumble across it. I try to include beautiful pictures or pictures of animals doing silly things, things that that we love to look at and that we get, oh, aren't they beautiful? Oh gosh, aren't we lucky to have these beautiful creatures in the world, in our lives, and so on. I love to share some lovely recipes, or maybe share a really happy meme or a funny meme, but as long as it's not harmful, as long as it's kind and uplifting. Those are my buzzwords and my watchwords, because I think if we were all to do that, there will be a sort of a big sea change in the way that social media operates, because we do need more positivity. I know that, interestingly enough, I've seen a big change in TV programs. So as you know, in the UK, we have these programs like the Great British Bake Off, we have the Great British Sewing Bee, and the Great Pottery Throwdown, all of these things. Now, they are competitions, and they have translated over to the USA, and I know that you do have those over there. And the reason that these programs are so popular in the USA is because you've got groups of people who are competing, but they're all helping each other. They're all being kind to each other. They're being really, you've got a great group energy there. You've got team spirit. And it's wonderful, because if you look back at some of the programs like America's Next Top Model, where they're actually pitting people against each other, and the showrunners are really digging in there and just trying to get the negativity flowing in the thought that this is what people want to watch. It really isn't. People want kindness. We need kindness in the world. We need love. We need compassion. And so it's lovely to see that actually the world is changing, and that actually our default as human beings, the vast majority of us, is kindness and compassion. If you look at what happens in a disaster, for example, you haven't got people going in and doing terrible things to other people to try and sort of, I'm all right, Jack, I'm going to climb over you. But actually what happens, the reality of what happens and what the research shows is that people go in there and they help their fellow human being. And it's very interesting. There's a wonderful program on YouTube, a full program at the moment. And you know something, the name escapes me right now, but what I'll do is I'll put it in the comments after the show, because it's freely available here on Netflix. And it's a wonderful program that actually shows the research in human kindness. And the fact is that our set point is to be good to each other. And that where you have disasters, let's say, for example, floods or fire or earthquake or what have you, the media, in order to sell programs, shows pictures of people looting and so on and so forth. And actually, the reality is that this happens in such a minuscule way compared to the 99.9% of people who are actively helping each other, helping their fellow man and woman. And that's what we do. And this is really important to remember, that we human beings are much better than we're portrayed in the media. So I hope that that helps people.
So Netflix show, what is that again? That we
do you know something, AJ? I'm going to leave the, if you don't mind, I can't bring the name of it to mind at the moment. As I say, my brain's a bit frazzled from, you know, up and down in the night looking after mum. But I want to, if you don't mind, I'll put the name in the in the comments after the show, if that's okay, and I'll send it to you on by text or by email, if that's okay. I'll look it up as soon as we've finished, if that's all right.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love to put it in the show notes.
Awesome. Okay.
And there's a question. Susanna says, do you have any suggestions for how to lift your mood when you're incredibly busy and things keep going wrong? For example, the car breaking down yesterday comes to mind.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. So we've got snow today, and my heating went. So as well as looking after mum and the doctors and the nurses and the support workers and, you know, on and off the loo and, you know, oh, my goodness. Then the heating went during the snow. Yeah. So I relate. I totally relate. So what have I been doing? Because I work in this field, obviously I've got the skills, and I'm doing I'm teaching a wonderful course. It's still open if anybody's interested in enrolling. It's called Mindfulness and Resilience. It's the Mindfulness and Resilience Academy, and I can give you some details for that as well, AJ. But what I do is I just do my mindfulness moments. I know it sounds so basic and so simplistic, but it works. This is the thing. It's just bringing yourself into the moment and just saying to yourself, in this moment right now, I'm safe. In this moment right now, I'm okay. In this moment right now, nothing bad is happening. It's in this particular moment. It may be, yes, I've got to deal with the car and sort the car out, or I've got to deal with the gas man and hope that he turns up, hope I get some heating on, and so on and so forth. But it even helps if you just do this, you just hug yourself. It's called havening. There's an actual integrative medical approach called havening. And it's actually, you just hug, give yourself a great big hug, and you just stroke yourself, stroke your shoulders and bring yourself right back down. It calms you down. It just actually sets off our calming. I can actually feel it happening. Right, everybody, whilst you're watching, you can do this with me. It actually just calm yourself down. I am safe. I am safe. I am calm. I am safe. Right now, in this very moment, everything is okay. Everything is just as it should be. You can close your eyes and just give yourself a lovely hug and stroke your shoulders. And it really, it's so profound. It's such a basic, profound exercise that looks, again, incredibly simplistic. The thing about positive psychology is that we all know this stuff. We all intuitively know it, but sometimes we just need a reminder. And, you know, so that's what I'm here to remind you about. So, and I hope you don't think that I'm sort of, you know, kind of teaching you stuff or talking about stuff that you're thinking, oh, I know that. But the point is, I do think in the day-to-day, that we forget. We forget to do the really basic stuff. And it happens because we're running around like crazy things, because we're all juggling a million and gazillion things all at once. And that's just modern life. But the good news is there are strategies to sort it out.
Jayney, I was Googling to see if I could find the show on Netflix, and I'm finding a couple. One is that are on that topic. One is called The Mind Explained, and one is called The Kindness Diaries.
Yeah, actually, those are great. This one is something like, it's something like, no, I'm not even going to have a stab at it because I'll mislead you and tell you something wrong. I was just going to say, if I have a quick little look, I'll see if I can just do a quick, it's actually, as I say, it is on YouTube, altruism. I'll just put in altruism film. There we go.
Because now you got everybody wanting to watch it.
I know, it's brilliant. I think it's actually the altruism. Yes, there we go. It's the altruism revolution.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, AJ. Yes, thanks for prompting me to search for that because I knew I'd know it when I saw it. Yeah, it's the altruism revolution. It's amazing. It's so interesting. They actually show you experiments in the film on babies. We have an altruism response even as little tiny babies. Human beings are amazing and they're much kinder than we think they are. So, which is a good thing. And we are getting there. We're getting there.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, AJ.
It's very, I took a mindfulness class once at UCLA, and actually I was sent by my gastroenterologist because I had IBS, and I learned a lot. It was really interesting because you'd think, well, it's not going to help, but it really does. It maybe doesn't cure 100%, but it sure makes you feel better about whatever you're going through.
It really does. Yeah, absolutely. I find the same thing with rheumatoid arthritis. Yeah, it really, to me, it actually does make a physical difference because I can actually notice because my blood levels of CRP to measure inflammation are always monitored by the doctors. And so I know that when I'm on point with my meditation and my mindfulness and doing all these good things, my CRP is a lot lower. So it's actually measurable. And that's not just me, by the way. These things are actually physiologically measurable. So this is why I'm sharing them with you, because I only ever want to talk about things that we have actual solid evidence for, and the research is really strong. So we know they work, and we know. And my hope is that people will go away and share this with their loved ones.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Jayney.
It's a pleasure. AJ, thank you for having me, because you know what, it's an absolute honor to be able to talk about this topic. It's important. It really is.
It really is. And there have been so many nice comments about it. Like one of them, Charles says, this is an awfully good speaker. Yes, absolutely. So
thank you, Charles. Well, thank you, sir.
That's great. Well, thanks so much, Jayney. Look forward to having you back next month. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow for Vegan Doc Talk with Scott Harrington. It's a Q&A, and it's a